You guys ever drink so much coffee that you start sweating? Asking for a friend. Maybe it's just because it's still like 30 below out and your body just doesn't know if it's coming or going sometimes. Anyways, let's do a wrap up of these three possible driving scenarios you're likely to face if you drive in a cold climate and have an EV. Specifically, we're here to talk about the Mustang Mach-E GT. If you're new to the channel, welcome. Please hit that subscribe button, give the video a like. On the channel, we talk about EVs, kind of specifically the Mustang Mach-E GT. And what we're talking about today, again, is the three videos I did. We're going to go over them in detail, and I'm going to give you my final thoughts on them. I really enjoyed doing this. I enjoyed the comments that you guys left. I've got some ideas for future videos. And of course, remember, I read the comments, so if you have some questions or you'd like to see some upcoming content, be sure to let me know, and we will talk about it. Let's break this down. So, without getting too technical, because remember, this isn't a peer-reviewed trial or anything like that, but what I kind of wanted to come up with is how can I simulate what it's like driving in cold temperatures and try to make it as real as possible. So what I had thought is, let's travel the same route and go the same speeds. If I'm going the same route, I'm probably going to be going the same speeds, but I'm not on the brakes, I'm not on the gas too much. I'm just trying to keep things as consistent as possible. I want to be in the vehicle the same amount of time to keep that fair as well, because who knows, there could be a sweet spot right at 20 minutes in the vehicle. It might start warming up much quicker than it would at 10 minutes. That would make sense. So for all of these tests, I was in the vehicle for at least 30 minutes. Try to get the external temperatures as close as possible. And overall, I think that was pretty good. There wasn't a huge range between the two. Between the three videos, even with winds, although a couple of the days the winds were slightly different, but I was never in any like hurricane force winds or anything. I used two thermometers because, as of course you could imagine, with lesser priced gear, it's kind of plus or minus about 3 degrees Fahrenheit, as you can see. And then finally, how does it feel? And I put feels in quotes because, of course, that's subjective. But how does it feel for me? I'm the same person. I'm wearing the same clothing each time. How does it feel in the car? What might be the best? All right, scenario one. And this is kind of in order from, not necessarily in the orders the video came out, but just we'll keep consistent with this. So in scenario one, it was an ice cold vehicle. We had no preconditioning, and the vehicle was parked outside, minus 17 air temp. Here's the interesting thing, as you'll see, this was the warmest by almost 10 degrees, well, by 10 degrees, in fact, even a little bit more so, than any of the other scenarios. So we are absolutely giving scenario one the best possible temperatures to do this in, and this will be important later. All right, so in this scenario, we're going to say that you don't have access to power. Now, this could be that you're parked on a street. Maybe you don't have a parking lot. Maybe you don't have a driveway. If you're in an apartment and all you have is like the city street parking, there's no way on the city street that you're getting power down there. If you live in a parking lot, I'm sorry, don't live in a parking lot. Oh, there's that coffee. If you live in an apartment building and you park in a parking lot and there's no EV chargers, I would imagine in the vast majority of parking lots, this is the case. Anybody who's ran power before knows it's expensive. We're talking some big wire here. This isn't just your normal 15 amp, 120 volt plug-in. In most cases, these EV chargers, they require 4-wire, anywhere from 6 to 8 gauge and a 40 amp circuit at 240 volts. That's some significant power. So that's expensive to do. This isn't available everywhere. It's a very real scenario for many EV drivers. I kind of got some flack where people are like, well, why would you buy an EV and not plug in? The answer is, I don't know, but I'm trying to do this to, if you're that person who's like, man, I don't have a place I can plug in all the time, you need to consider this. This needs to be a serious consideration point for you. What I noticed when I got in the vehicle first is the screen response was very slow. This is to be expected. It's minus 17 today, or on the day that I filmed this. It was cold, so we expect that. The floor was extremely cold. I've talked about this in some of the other videos. I truly believe that that battery bank, it's so massive, there's such a large energy storage mass there, that when those batteries are just ice cold, beyond frozen, that cold stays with the vehicle and you feel that on your feet. And it's really something. I know a couple other people who have EVs said, well, I usually wear boots in the winter. I often don't. I know. I wear my running shoes in the winter. Yes, snow gets on them. Yes, sometimes my feet get a little cold. But in this particular scenario, although I was wearing my shoes, they were not wet or had snow on them, just to be fair. The PTC heater, this 5,000 watt heater, was simply unable to keep up. It just wasn't. This was a frustrating yet eye-opening video for me. And this is where I think the EV makers, they need to do better here. There's some people who are like, oh, my Tesla, my Tesla. Well, is it minus 17 and your Tesla's been outside with no preconditioning? Because I would argue that a heat pump, which is the style that Tesla uses, is going to perform even worse in these temperatures. Heat pumps don't typically like temperatures, I mean, even sometimes in the single digits, like that's really cold for a heat pump. Most heat pumps prefer like above freezing, above 32 Fahrenheit. Will they work in colder? Sure, but they're not as efficient. A PTC heater is just taking direct power straight from the battery, and it's an electric heating element is what it is. So in theory, that PTC heater should work the best. In this particular scenario, it was unable to keep up. If I had to go on a road trip and I had the kids in there, I mean, like you saw it was well over 30 minutes and I didn't even get the inside above freezing. Now, if I would have kept going for 45 minutes, an hour, would it have warmed up in there? Sure, of course it would have. But, I mean, for crying out loud, 40 some minutes to get above freezing, like that's absurd. For the amount of money I paid for this vehicle, and maybe you too, like that's unacceptable. There's a large part of the world that is going to be facing temperatures like this, and to have this be the case, like how is this even happening? It's 2022 now, and we have vehicles that like we can't take road trips in because it's so cold, and these vehicles can't warm up. This is just ridiculous. I'm going to try not to rant here much longer, but this is extremely frustrating, you guys. Minus 17, this was the warmest of all the temperature tests that we did, and this wouldn't work. Again, I can hear you guys in the comments section going, well, park in a heated garage, well, plug in. Not everybody can do this. I'll say it 100 times, not everybody has the luxury of being able to plug in each time. Point being, if you can't plug in, you might be facing this. Now, could I have preconditioned but still not been plugged in? Yes. Would it have affected my range? Yes. Possibly could I do a test on that? Yes, and maybe we will. But for now, we're going to keep on moving here. So this simply wouldn't be suitable for a road trip. If I had the kids in the back, they would have had to have hat, gloves, jacket, and likely some type of a blanket or something just to kind of stay warm for at least that first 45 minutes, if not longer. Okay, moving on. Scenario 2. We're parked outside, but now we're plugged in and charging, and we also used the push to start on it, the remote start. I didn't, use the schedule because I really wasn't sure what time I was leaving, but I used the remote start. So not only was it plugged in, but it had 15 minutes of preconditioning. The temp was minus 26. So 9 degrees colder than we had just said in our previous video, right? It was 17? Yeah. So it significantly colder, like almost 10 degrees. That's a lot. That's a lot colder, right? I mean, that makes a big difference when it's this cold. So what did I notice when I hopped in? First, I couldn't get in because, once again, the Ford Pass app wasn't responding. Whole nother video. Anyways, I hopped in though, seat and the wheel, steering wheel, already warm. Like, felt good. It was comfortable to get in. Like, I could feel that hot seat. That was good. And the inside air felt much warmer than it did outside. I could tell that there was electric heat. That PTC heater was working. The coolant had a chance to get warm. That was inside the heater core, and I was getting some warm air inside the cabin. And this was surprising to me because the floor felt surprisingly warm. Now, did it feel hot? No. Did it feel like it came out like as warm as it does when it's in the heated garage? No. But it definitely was warmer than scenario 1. Significantly warmer. So that leads me to believe that when you're plugged in, a small amount of the energy from the grid is going to a battery heater. Now, I'm not talking about 15 minutes of battery heat. I think that it must be on like kind of a trickle chart or a trickle conditioner or like a trickle heater where it's just kind of peeling off a little bit of that energy just to keep the batteries constantly at a certain temperature. The vehicle did cool down. Once we got moving, I could feel it starting to get cool. I don't know if that, it was just because we were taking in some outside cold air, because remember, minus 26, that's cold. So I did feel that we did start to cool down a little bit. However, overall, absolutely suitable for road trips with passengers. So we go back to kind of the idea that maybe you live in a place where you don't have a heated garage, but you're fortunate enough where on your shed, on the outside of your house, you have a charging pedestal, something where you can leave the vehicle plugged in. So if you have time to do the 15-minute preconditioning, or you set your depart schedule so the vehicle's warming up 15 minutes prior and it's minus 26 out, you can absolutely comfortably do your commute to work, do a road trip, go get groceries, whatever it is you need to do. If you have the time, and if it works out, like especially for a road trip, consider preconditioning for longer than 15 minutes. I think I had said in the video, like I probably would have done 20 or 25 minutes, and I absolutely would have, having the kids in there and stuff. Remember, if the longer you can precondition while you're plugged in, because that heater draws 5,000 watts, that's a significant amount of power. So if you can force that heater to keep working, keep peeling power from the grid, that's less power it's going to take from your batteries. So while you might start feeling some of that warmth coming out of the vents, that heater core may not have fully warmed up. So by allowing it to stay plugged in, you're using the grid power versus taking from your battery. And certainly back to the road trip scenario, you want to have as much power for your road trip in your battery bank as possible. So in this scenario, which I actually think is most likely the vast majority of you folks watching this video, whether you already have an EV or you're considering buying one, this will work. Stay plugged in, use the pre-trip conditioning at least 15 minutes. As cold as it was today, consider 20 or 25 minutes. Scenario 3, vehicle in a heated garage, minus 26. I promise these were not on the same days. Well over a week apart, or about a week apart, I should say. As you could probably already imagine, this was our best case scenario. Vehicle's already warm, it's already at a comfortable temp, and the floor is very warm. That battery bank, your feet are nice and toasty. As I had said before, that stores a lot of thermal mass. And so if you can have those guys already warmed up, that's going to make, it does make a very big difference. Something else you could do is just consider plugging in a short precondition. If I was going on a road trip, yeah, even though I'm in the garage, it's going to stay plugged in, and I probably would start it up again just because get that heater PTC element, get that thing pre-warmed, get it nice and toasty while it's taking power from the grid. I wrote on here, be mindful of the garage temp. Those of you who maybe still think I'm crazy for living in Minnesota, I have a propane heater in the garage that will just keep it at like 50 or 55 degrees, but I'm often out there doing work, during projects, and I've got a wood stove in there. So if I've got the wood stove going, the temperatures can fluctuate quite wildly. So I've had a few times where the temps are like up to 77 in there, not because I have it set to that, but you burn in some oak and it's nice and hot. So the inside temp is 77, 78 degrees. I've preconditioned the vehicle in the garage and the air conditioning turned on. So I just wrote, be mindful of the garage temp if you do have a situation like that, because you don't want it to be counterproductive. I got in there, I'm like, why does it feel cold and like cool in here? There's cool air coming out of the vents, and I looked and the AC was on. So that kind of backfired on me. So now I'm mindful of that. But of course, this is the best possible scenario for extreme cold. It just kind of goes without saying. The heated garage is going to be the best if you're able to do that. If you're in an apartment building and you have the option of a heated garage, maybe even if it's not year-round, maybe you can just buy like a winter pass. I don't know if that's a thing, but man, it's going to make your commutes a lot more comfortable if you can do that. So some final thoughts. Good comments about recirculating air, using that maximum recirculation function. Would I do that? I think, yes, I would. The reason I didn't do it in the rest of the videos is because I honestly, I didn't think about it in the first video, and I was trying to stay consistent with the other two. So instead of pulling in that minus 26 outside air, if you put it on recirculation, you're taking that cabin air, which is already pre-warmed to a certain degree, and you're running it back through that heater core, back through the block there, through the cooling or the heating fins. So you're going to warm up much quicker. The problem with that is by not bringing in any outside air, your windows are going to fog up really quick. So essentially what it would be doing is run recirculation for several minutes or until your windows start to fog, and then put it back on the defrost setting. So now it's pulling in outside air again. And you're just going to kind of have to go back and forth between those two. But that would be the quickest way to warm up the cabin. Now, would that have been a game changer in scenario 1 where we weren't plugged in? I don't think so. Would it have helped? Yes, but I don't think it would have to the point where, hey, look, this thing is amazing. I don't think it would have done that. Fan speeds. So somebody commented that instead of having, like, on that first video I had it on fan speed 6 out of 7, maybe reduce that a little bit so that there's not so much air going through the heater core. Again, would that have helped? I think so. But I just don't know it would have been like the game changer. I don't think that. These extreme temperatures are a real world scenario, and the EV makers, they have to do better. They have to. I doubt anybody from Ford is watching this, but you know, I think that everything was well intended. I don't think an EV maker or any vehicle maker is going to put a vehicle out that's just yeah, this thing's probably not going to perform well. I would have to think that they did some testing. Here's the problem with this, though. Their testing could have been, hey, let's park this thing in a giant freezer, let's make it cold, and then let's see if it works. I think that's completely different from a real-world scenario, right? Like, things are just different when you're out in the field and you're not in a lab or a controlled environment. And going back to scenario 1, this is a fail on Ford's part. It absolutely is. Like, I'm going to dish it to them real world. Like, it is not working, Ford. I wrote, you know, no ICE vehicle needs to advertise that their heater can keep up. So if you have an internal combustion engine vehicle, they're not like, oh, hey, by the way, our heater works. Well, who would say that? You wouldn't even think. You would just know that it works. And like, this is just, it's terrible. I'm getting frustrated again just because I think there's going to be some people out there who just think it's going to work, and it's not, right? It just isn't. In scenario 1, heat pump versus PTC or a future hybrid design. I can really see something changing because of this. Like, I'm sure I'm not going to be the only one who feels this way. So heat pumps, I talked about them already. They work great, especially in mild climates. Like, in my opinion, heat pump is the way to go in the mild climates. PTC, I think, is the way to go if you live in climates like where I'm at. I think it's a better technology. However, what we found here is I don't think 5 kW is enough. So instead, if they make it like 7, 8, 9, maybe 10, I think 10 is getting to be a lot, but put that back on me. Put that on the driver. If I have the heat going and like, oh man, I get some hot heat, this feels nice, but boy, my range just dropped by like 10%, that's on me if I'm going to have the heat blasting that much. But again, let the driver make that decision. If I have to cut my road trip 40 miles short and hit a fast charger or something, so be it. But let me make that decision. Maybe they come up with something where the PTC heater starts out, it gets things warm quicker, but then a more efficient heat pump comes on and sort of like takes over once that cabin temp warms up. I think there's some good possibilities for better HVAC systems out there. I guess we'll see what the future holds. Bottom line, keep plugged in when possible. If you have access to that heated garage, use it. But again, if you can stay plugged in and use that pre-trip condition, you're going to be golden. You're going to be good. That I've had very, very good luck with that features, even down to I think we've already hit like 33 below a couple times, and that the preheat function absolutely does work, especially when you're plugged in. That's the big key. All right, that's all I got for you today. Thanks for watching, guys. If you haven't done so, give me a like. and subscribe to the channel. I've got lots more EV content. If you found something in here particularly useful, let me know. If you have a question, if something doesn't make sense, let me know. I'd love to hear from you guys. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you on the next video.